Around 5:30 on Sunday evening, Clara walked through the front door. She casually dropped her purse and keys onto the wingback chair before making her way down the hall toward the master bedroom. I couldn't say for sure if she noticed me sitting there in the den, but by then, it hardly mattered. Over the past few years, I had become nearly invisible to her. I walked over, picked up her key ring, and took out the extra keys she had for my Toyota. Then, without a second thought, I opened her purse, pulled out her cell phone and wallet. From the wallet, I removed all the cash and credit cards, slipping them into my pocket. Just to make sure, I also grabbed her driver's license. With everything tucked away, I returned to my seat in the den. 15 minutes later, Clara came back down the hall, looking quite put together. As she slung her purse strap over her shoulder and grabbed her keys, she looked at me and said, "I'm going out with the girls from work. Don't wait up for me." I didn't hesitate. "No, you're not," I replied flatly. She shot me an irritated glance. "Ethan, you should know by now that you don't control me. I'll do whatever I want." "I didn't say you couldn't go out with your work friends," I retorted, my voice hardening. "What I'm saying is you're not going out with them. You're gonna go fuck your boyfriend instead. So don't lie to me anymore." Clara froze for a moment, caught off guard by my bluntness. Then, in a rare show of defiance, she stormed into the den and stood across from me, looking me squarely in the eye. "All right, Ethan. So you know, I would have preferred to do this more civilly, but clearly, that's not an option. You have two choices. You can either accept the reality of my new life and salvage what's left of this marriage, or you can have me divorce you and clean you out. Which is it going to be?" I leaned back, a grin creeping onto my face. "I choose door number 3. She scoffed. "Don't be childish. There is no door number 3. Either you accept that I have a lover now, someone who actually knows how to treat me, or you prepare to face the consequences. And trust me, I mean consequences." Without a word, I stood up, walked over to Clara, and gripped her shoulders, pushing her back against the wall. With my nose just inches from her face, I calmly slid her engagement and wedding rings off her left hand. My gaze was cold and empty as I whispered, "Oh, there is a door number 3. It's right behind you. It's the front door. And when you walk through it, it'll be for the last time. You'll leave with only the clothes on your back, and you'll never cross this threshold again. You won't get a dime of my money. You'll lose your husband, your daughter, your house, your car, and eventually, your job. You'll lose everything." Clara's eyes darted nervously, her bravado cracking. "You're delusional, Ethan. My lawyer will eat you alive. Divorce papers are getting served to you at work tomorrow. If you touch me, you'll pay. You have no idea what you're doing." I released her shoulders and shoved her toward the front door. She stumbled in her high heels, yelling incoherently as I pushed her outside. Standing in the yard, she tried to regain some semblance of control, but I didn't give her the chance. I slammed the doors shut behind me, engaging the locks as she stood on the other side, ranting. As Clara's car disappeared down the street, I made the first of 2 phone calls. The first was to my 19-year-old daughter, Sophie, who was away at college. "Hey, honey, it's Dad," I started, my tone serious. "Things have finally come to a head with your mom. She's probably going to move in with her boyfriend, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. I've recorded our last conversation, along with hours of previous arguments. It's all there, so when she tries to twist things and make me the villain, you'll have the truth on your side." I paused for a moment. "Sweetheart, I don't know how many men she's been with, but this one's different. His name's Sylvester, and he's bad news. Someone with a history of violence against women. I'll explain more soon, but I just want you to be careful. I don't know if you'll hear from your mom anytime soon, but I want you to be ready for whatever she tries to tell you. And one more thing, stay safe." After I finished with Sophie, I asked her to come home over the weekend so we could talk in person. She agreed to drive down on Friday. Next, I called Joanna, our neighbor at the end of the block. "Joanna, it's Ethan. If your offer's still on the table, I'd like to take you up on it. Can you come over in about an hour?" She agreed, and I hung up. I'd been married to Clara for nearly 20 years. We'd gotten married young, had Sophie, and for a while, things seemed fine. But over time, the woman I married changed. Clara became more demanding, more critical, and less pleasant to be around. It was as though she was always dissatisfied with something, and no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to make a difference. Looking back, I realized I had enabled her behavior for far too long, always trying to please her when I should have taken control of the situation from the start. When I found out about her affair with Sylvester, everything clicked. I wasn't surprised, but the man she had chosen was shocking. Sylvester was a steroid-fueled ex-con with a violent past. And now, I knew the marriage was over. A strange sense of relief washed over me, and I began plotting my next moves. I didn't take half of everything like most betrayed husbands. No, I took every last penny, every dollar I could find, including cash hidden around the house. I changed the locks on the doors and started making plans to push Clara to her breaking point. I knew how to push her buttons, how to make her angry, how to make her unravel. For months, I'd been recording our arguments on a tiny device I kept on me at all times. Clara thought it was just a simple MP3 player, but in reality, I was building a damning archive of her behavior. I knew no one would believe my version of events without proof. After all, when we were around others, especially Sophie, she was the picture of sweetness and innocence. Later that evening, I hung up on Clara and didn't pick up when she called back 5 times. I'd learned from other guys in similar situations that sometimes a pissed-off wife will inadvertently reveal something incriminating in a fit of rage. I didn't answer her calls, but I listened to every single voicemail. Sure enough, over the next few weeks, Clara would slip up more than once. Her angry outbursts became a gold mine of information. At 4:30 that afternoon, I drove to the parking lot of Clara's workplace, planning to get there before everyone started heading out for the day. I'd already made sure there were no surveillance cameras around. What I had in mind would only take a minute tops. I parked next to her car, slipped out, and snipped the valve stems on all 4 of her tires with a wire cutter. I knew she'd be furious, but there was something especially satisfying about knowing she wouldn't be able to fix them in time to get back to the house before 6:45. True to form, Clara showed up around 6:35, and she was visibly agitated. Apparently, she'd gotten a ride with someone. She was desperate to get into the house. I knew why. I'd already found receipts for clothes she'd bought, but never brought home, which meant she had a stash of clothing at her lover's place. Clearly, there was something else she wanted from me. I quietly slipped out the back door and hurried down to Joanna's house. Clara was pounding on the front door when I left her. I could hear her screaming as I made my escape. When I came back later that evening, my front door window had been smashed in. There was blood all around the shattered glass. After checking the security footage, I called the police. The video showed Clara, raging, using a tire iron, likely stolen from her friend's car, to smash my window. As she broke the glass and reached inside, you could clearly hear her threatening to kill me. Unfortunately for her, the deadbolt I had installed was the kind that required a key on either side. When she tried to pull her arm back through, she ended up slicing her forearm open, prompting another round of frantic screaming and more threats. I reported the damage immediately, and the officer who responded helped me start the process of filing for a protection order. By the next morning, Clara was served papers preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me or our home. When I picked up the phone and saw it was her again, I wasn't surprised. Her voice was livid. "What the hell do you think you're doing, you fucking asshole?" she screamed. She threatened me again, but I calmly recorded the entire conversation. Hours later, after she'd cooled down, Clara called once more. This time, she told me she was sending her friend Rachel over to pick up some of her things. I agreed to let Rachel come by at 5:30 that Tuesday evening. I left work a little early to set up a video camera in the bedroom, ensuring the monitor was hidden in the middle bedroom. At exactly 5:30, Rachel arrived. She was polite, but seemed uneasy. As she started gathering clothes into 2 black trash bags, she glanced at me nervously. "Could you grab me some water?" she asked, clearly trying to keep things casual. I smiled and walked toward the kitchen. But as soon as I stepped into the middle bedroom, I saw on the monitor that Rachel had slipped a shoebox from the closet into the bag she was carrying. I froze for a moment, then grabbed a glass of water and went back to her. "That'll do it," she said, clearly eager to leave. "Could you grab that bag?" "I'll take this one." She pointed to the heavier bag, but I refused. "Why don't you let me take the heavy one?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. What's in that bag, Rachel? She froze, and I could see her fidgeting as she tried to drag the bag toward the door. I stood up, walked over, and yanked the bag open. What's in this box? I asked, pulling out the shoebox she had tried to hide. Inside, it was stuffed with bundles of $50 and $100 bills. Rachel's face went pale. It's just clothes and stuff Clara needs, she mumbled, her voice trembling. I wasn't buying it. Rachel, you're a terrible liar. What's in this box? I asked, my voice steely. Rachel's face crumpled, and she began to stammer. It's not mine. It's Clara's. She sent me here to get it. I stood tall and dragged her toward the door, my grip tight on her arm. I'm sorry, but if you came into my house to get clothes, then why the hell are you walking out with a box of money? I don't see Clara's name on that box anywhere. Looks like you're stealing from me, Rachel. I wasn't stealing, she protested, crying now. Please, Ethan, I have kids and a husband. I can't go to jail. I sat her down on the couch, looking her dead in the eye. You're never welcome in my house again, Rachel. But here's your chance to make this right. You'll leave, and you'll report to Clara that I caught you stealing. Then, you'll report back to me everything she says or does, especially anything about our divorce or her relationship with that asshole Sylvester. Understand? Rachel nodded, reluctantly agreeing. I had everything on video, and I let her know I could call the cops at any moment. As soon as she was gone, I took the money and brought it to Joanna's house. She agreed to keep it hidden from me until I figured out how to stash it where Clara could never find it. I knew where the money had likely come from. Clara's Aunt Mabel, who had been a notorious miser, passed away a few months back, and Clara was the sole heir. At the time of the will reading, I'd overheard that Aunt Mabel had left Clara a small cabin, but no one had mentioned money. Apparently, when Clara went to check out the cabin, she found cash hidden there. When Clara called again, I recorded the conversation, but I played it cool. The money's mine, Ethan. I want my damned money, she yelled, furious. I kept my tone calm. Clara, I have no idea what you're talking about. I caught Rachel trying to steal money from my bedside table. If she took anything, it's gone now. I don't have it. Maybe Rachel took it with her. I know it's my money, Ethan. It's from Aunt Mabel's inheritance, she snapped. I didn't flinch. If it was from Aunt Mabel, then why wasn't it reported on your taxes last year? Funny how you signed the returns, but no mention of this money. You can call the police, and we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, I'll be reporting it to the IRS. She slammed the phone down, and I knew she wouldn't let this go. I'd pushed her too far, but at this point, there was no turning back. The next morning, I anticipated trouble. Clara had already made it clear that she was willing to go to extremes to get back at me, and I figured it was only a matter of time before she tried to do something to my car. I wasn't taking any chances. I had a camera installed on the dashboard, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted clear shots of her actions, especially if she decided to vandalize my car. So, on Wednesday morning, I parked in the parking garage, set up a hidden camera outside the car, and kept an eye on the live feed from my desk. An hour before lunch, I watched the monitor as Clara parked behind my car, got out, and started smashing every window with a hammer. She dented the fenders and shattered the windshield. I winced as I watched her destroy my property. As she continued to scream threats, "I'm going to bash in your head," I dialed the police. I had them waiting for her as she came out of the parking garage. When the officers saw the video and the wrecked Toyota, they cuffed her and took her away. The damage she caused was enough to qualify for a felony, and the resisting arrest charge was the cherry on top. As they dragged her to the squad car, she shot me a pleading look. I just stared back, unblinking. No sympathy. The following day, Clara's lawyer called me to inform me that there would be a hearing before a magistrate about the money I'd taken from our joint accounts. The hearing was set for 10 a.m. Thursday morning. I arrived at the small courtroom at 9:50, wondering if Clara had made bail. She walked in right on time, her lawyer at her side. She wore a smug look on her face, but it didn't last. Her lawyer stood and addressed the judge, his voice sharp. "Your Honor, my client has been cut off from the joint bank account she shared with her husband. He unlawfully removed all the money after she filed for divorce." The courtroom was tense, and I could feel Clara's eyes boring into me from across the room. As the judge asked me for my side, I stood up and faced him. "Yes, Your Honor," I began, trying to remain calm. My wife, Mrs. Reynolds, has ample funds of her own. She's been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months. The money I withdrew was reasonable compensation for the bills and the mortgage I've been paying by myself while she abandoned our marriage and moved in with the man she's been cheating on me with. Clara jumped up from her seat, her voice shrill and full of fury. That's a lie. He took all the money out of our savings and checking. He didn't leave me a dime. I don't have anything. Her lawyer, a slick, well-dressed man, grabbed her arm and gently pulled her back into her seat, giving her a stern look to calm down. I took that moment to pass the relevant documents to the judge. Your Honor, I continued, these are the banking records for the past year. As you'll notice, up until about 6 months ago, Clara's paychecks are clearly shown in yellow highlights. You'll also see her periodic bonuses in orange highlights. Then, about 6 months ago, her paycheck stopped being deposited into our joint account. Her bonuses also disappeared. I paused, making sure everyone was following. I also have a recording of a conversation I had with her personnel office. If you'd like, I can play it. It verifies that her direct deposit was altered at that time. The total amount diverted from our joint account is in the thousands of dollars. The judge glanced over the banking statements, then slowly peered over his glasses at Clara. Mrs. Reynolds, do you have anything to say about this? Her lawyer stood up, trying to salvage the situation. Your Honor, the fact that my client may have funds of her own does not absolve Mr. Reynolds of his responsibility to give her her due share. The judge gave the lawyer a sharp look before turning to Clara. Miss Reynolds, you've stated that you're destitute, but I think we've just uncovered that's not true now, is it? He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. It seems, in fact, that you've been siphoning funds from the joint account, funds that should have been community property. You've tried to deceive both your husband and this court about that fact. I couldn't help but feel a small rush of vindication as the judge turned to me. As Mr. Reynolds has been paying all the bills out of his own funds, I see no reason to alter any financial arrangements at this time. When the divorce settlement is finalized, the assets will be declared and divided accordingly. He slammed his gavel. Case dismissed. Clara caught up to me in the hallway as I was leaving the courtroom, her face twisted in rage. I'll get you, you bastard, she spat. I'm going to tear you down. I didn't flinch. Clara, you're not supposed to be within 500 feet of me. I'll call the cops if you don't move. I gave her a cold stare. By the way, how do you like jail? Ready to spend a lot more time there? You've got a felony charge pending. I could see her clenching her fists, her face turning beet red. She looked like she wanted to take a swing at me, but I just kept walking down the hallway toward the door. She stood there, fists balled up, glaring at me. I didn't stop. That evening, I went to a local bar. Not my usual haunt, but a place I'd met a guy, Zeke, about a month ago. He wasn't much, but he had a particular problem that piqued my interest. I walked in, and there he was sitting at his usual bar stool. Hey, man, I remember you, Zeke said. What's your name again? Not important, I replied. Hey, do you still have that piece of crap car? Zeke sighed heavily. Oh God, yeah, I hate that thing. The wife took the good one when she ran off with that creep in a suit. Now the air conditioner's out, and I'm dying in this heat. Nobody will buy it, and it's the only car I've got to get around in. She took all the money, and my credit is shot. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Do you have your insurance paid up on it? Yeah, it's paid, Zeke replied, looking at me warily. I leaned in. If you do, I might be able to help you unload it and get something better. Zeke looked at me, curious but unsure. I'm all ears, man. Suppose you were driving down 38th Street and a gray cat suddenly ran out in front of you. Naturally, you slam on the brakes. But a lady following you too closely doesn't react in time and crashes into the back of your old car. At anything over 15 miles an hour, the car's totaled. If you got your seatbelt on and your head braced against the headrest, you'll be okay physically. Insurance would cover the loss, and you could at least get a car with air conditioning. Zeke looked like he was about to protest, but stopped himself. But what if the person who hit me gets hurt? I couldn't do that to someone. I smiled, though there was no kindness in it. I can guarantee you that the person who hits you will be a cheating wife with no one else in the car. If you follow my instructions, she won't even know what hit her. Zeke's eyes lit up. Man, I hate cheating bastards, and I could really use a better ride. What do you want me to do? Park at the corner of 38th and Ling by 5 p.m. tomorrow, I said, laying it out for him. Look to your left, and when you see a blue Miata, pull out of the parking lot and head your way. Get in front of her. She's a tailgating asshole, so drive a block or so until she's on your bumper. Then, you see the cat crossing the road. Brace yourself and hit your brakes hard. Just stay in the car after that and dial the cops. Tell the EMS guys you think you might have whiplash. Don't talk to anyone, and make sure you never met me. I'll never be in this bar again, and we don't know each other. Zeke looked at me, his grin widening. Man, you're cold, but not as cold as the air conditioning in my new ride. I walked out of the bar, feeling the weight of everything starting to fall into place. Friday came, and I left work early to meet my daughter, Sophie, at home. She'd finished her classes and had hurried back to town as we'd arranged. We'd planned to talk about the divorce, and this time, I wanted her to hear the full story. We spent a while talking about everything that had happened, and I played her the recording of the conversation between Clara and me, the one from when I confronted her about the affair. Sophie was appalled by the ruthless tone of her mother, and she couldn't believe the things Clara had said. I also played Sophie several more recordings, things I'd secretly captured over the past 2 years. Sophie's face changed as she listened, her expression growing darker as she realized how much she hadn't known about her mother. Do you know this guy Mom's with, Dad? She asked quietly, a look of concern crossing her face. I know enough, I said, and I want you to stay away from him. If you ever have to meet with your mother, make sure it's in a public place, with people around. I don't know what he might do to you to get to me, but if he's around, you stay safe. Got it? Sophie nodded, her face set in determination. I know you and Mom had some problems, but I didn't realize it was this bad. I took a deep breath, ready for the question I knew was coming. Sophie, the way I see it, your mother and I had radically different ideas about what a marriage should be. I've been doing a lot of thinking about it, and I came up with a theory. It's probably something someone else has already written about in a book, but it's something I figured out on my own. I launched into a long explanation, but I could tell she was listening closely. I explained my theory about relationships and how authority could be distributed in 4 different ways, how the balance of power affected everything, and how her mother and I had never been on the same page. The problem, I said, was that your mother saw me as weak because I wanted to share authority. She couldn't respect that. Over time, she took control of everything, and I had no room to breathe. It was either do things her way or get the brunt of her anger and criticism. And when she decided to be the boss, I couldn't stand it. That's when the marriage started to break down. Sophie was silent for a moment, processing everything. I get it, Dad, she finally said. I think I understand now. And for the first time in months, I felt like I might finally be on the right path. I had always believed that the kind of authority distribution I described to Sophie was crucial to a healthy relationship. But as I reflected on what had happened between Clara and me, I realized how wrong it had all gone. Deep down, I understood that a wife can respect her husband if he is dominant, but once that respect is lost, it's nearly impossible to get it back. A wife who dominates a husband often loses respect for him, and that's where things went off the rails for Clara and me. I started to see it more clearly as the weeks went by. Her feelings toward me changed, and so did mine toward her. When I finally realized what had happened in our marriage, I tried to fight back. But by then, Clara had already pegged me as a weak man, a wimp. When I refused to let her boss me around anymore, she saw it as childish defiance. She didn't see me as her equal, but as a recalcitrant child she could no longer control. I knew that I could never regain her respect, but the divorce was my final chance to make her see the consequences of her actions. Maybe, just maybe, she'd understand the weight of her mistakes and feel the sting of the loss. And maybe this would be the wake-up call she needed. Sophie, someday you'll find someone to share your life with, I said, trying to pass on something meaningful from my own experience. When you're figuring out things like having children, what work to do, and where to live, be sure you and your partner know what to expect. Work out how you're going to share authority, and make sure you both respect each other. Because if you don't, you'll both end up miserable, like your mother and I did. I promise, Dad, Sophie said, her voice filled with conviction. I won't forget. We didn't talk much after that, but I knew Sophie was processing everything in her own way. Life moved on, until the phone call that changed everything. The phone rang late that evening. Mr. Reynolds, the voice on the other end, said, "This is Memorial Hospital. Your wife has been in a car wreck. She's stable and not injured too badly, but she will be with us at least overnight." Sophie and I rushed to the hospital, though it was clear neither of us had much love left for Clara. I let Sophie go in first, not wanting to face her directly. When she came back out, her face was grim. I figured there had been harsh words exchanged between the two of them. I didn't wait long before I asked to talk to Clara alone. When she emerged, looking disheveled and grim, I couldn't help myself. "Gee, Bev, you look like crap," I said with a slight grin, trying to mask my bitterness. "What a shitty week for you, huh? First you lose your marriage, your husband, and the house. Then you get served with a restraining order and arrested for a felony. Now you've wrecked your car, and you're stuck in the hospital with a broken wrist and a face blasted by the airbag. I think this divorce is working out pretty well for me. Actually, I've even got great sex waiting for me whenever I want it." Clara's face contorted in rage. "Fuck you," she spat. I leaned in, not backing down. "Hey, Bev, where's your boy Vince? He didn't come to visit you?" "No worries. He's probably busy with one of his other women. Right now, he's probably fucking someone else." She turned pale, but I wasn't done. "You probably didn't know about the others when you started all this, did you? Looks like you know now. Wonder how long it'll be before Vince asks you to service one of them. Hell, I never thought of you as a rug muncher, but I guess it's a good skill to learn, since you'll probably need it in jail." Clara didn't respond, but I could see her seething. I kept going, hitting her where it hurt. "What car insurance did you get, Bev?" "Oh, wait, you didn't. I dropped you from the policy. You demanded the Miata be in your name only, so it's your responsibility now. If you didn't get it covered this week, you're really fucked. You'll have tickets to pay, towing charges, and payments you'll still have to make on that car, which will probably end up sitting in a junkyard while you're still paying for it. But don't worry, you won't need another car, since you won't have a job after you get convicted of a felony. And the guy you hit, his insurance company is going to come after you for damages." I paused for effect, then added, "Oh, and I dropped you off my health insurance on Monday. Didn't get that changed either, did you? You're screwed. An ambulance ride, emergency room visit, x-rays, a cast on your arm, a hospital stay. That's going to cost thousands. You should have planned better, Bev." She looked like she wanted to lash out at me, but I wasn't finished. "Remember that time you got sick a couple of years ago? I took a week off to take care of you. I held your head while you puked, cleaned up the mess, called the doctor, went to the pharmacy. When you were better, you went right back to ragging on me, calling me childish. I wonder how Vince will take care of you the next time you get sick." I turned to leave, but before I did, I added, "I've got to go give Vince a call. When you think he's done fucking his other women, let him know I'm still winning." Clara was sitting there sobbing, but I didn't care. I had moved on, and I was done feeling sorry for her. As far as I was concerned, she made her own bed. The next few months were quiet, almost too quiet. I checked in with Rachel from time to time, though she was becoming increasingly alarmed by the hold Vince seemed to have over Clara. Eventually, Rachel drifted away from her entirely, realizing that there was no helping her friend. One evening, as I was walking toward my front door, I was suddenly tackled from behind. A man wearing a ski mask knocked the wind out of me and twisted my arm behind my back. "Give me the shoebox of money," he yelled in my ear. "Tell the district attorney to drop the charges." It was Vince. I couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen this coming, but as luck would have it, I still had my car key in my hand. I punched the panic button, and the car alarm immediately blared. Vince cursed and punched me in the back of the head, then let go of me and ran off, clearly furious. Lights came on in the neighboring houses, and people started to peek out of their windows. I yelled for someone to call the cops, and within minutes, a patrol car pulled up. I wasn't seriously hurt, but I felt shaken. Vince was long gone, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he'd try again. When I called Sophie the next day to tell her about the attack, she shocked me with her own story. "Dad, I didn't want to tell you, but I had a run-in with Vince too," she confessed. "Mom called me, asking me to pick her up. When I got there, she pulled me into her apartment, and then Vince came out. He said since Mom couldn't perform well in bed because of her injuries, I had to take up the slack. He said she owed him, and I was the payment." I felt my blood run cold. "What did you do?" Sophie's voice wavered. I tried to leave. I hit him with pepper spray when he grabbed my wrist to pull me into the bedroom. He screamed, but I got away. Mom, she didn't stop him. She just went to help him into the bathroom after that. The betrayal in her voice nearly broke me. I can't believe my own mom tried to pin me out to that bastard. I don't know if I can ever forgive her for that, Dad. I was boiling with rage, my protective instincts flaring, but Sophie calmed me down. I'm fine, Dad. I'm okay. Just think about the future. I promised Sophie she would be safe, no matter what. I told her to stay at school until the trial was over and to always have protection with her. She agreed, but the anger still burned deep in my gut. Vince had made a big mistake attacking me, but the recording Sophie had made of her encounter with him was my trump card. I played it for the district attorney, reminding him of the assault on me and Vince's manipulation of my daughter. The DA promised to pursue the maximum penalty for Vince, and I told him to go after Clara as well. As for the maximum sentence, I said firmly, Clara is under his control, and maybe a few months in jail will finally give her the wake-up call she needs. The trial moved forward. I felt more secure at home and at work, but I remained vigilant. There were times when I knew I was vulnerable, especially during my drives to and from work through isolated areas of the road. I never let my guard down, but there were still moments when I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over yet. The long drive home always made me cautious. The ranch roads leading to my house were isolated, with locked gates and little traffic. I kept the Beretta with me at all times, never fully trusting the silence. A few days before Clara's trial was set to begin, I noticed the headlights of a pickup truck behind me. At first, it seemed harmless enough, but then the truck closed in, getting dangerously close to my bumper, the driver matching my speed at 55 miles per hour. My skin prickled with unease. I wasn't sure if it was Vince himself or one of his hired goons, but I didn't want to take any chances. I immediately hit the speed dial on my phone to alert the cops and activated the recorder. I began to accelerate, my heart racing, as the truck stayed right behind me, matching my every move. I upped my speed to 70 miles per hour, trying to create some distance, but the pickup was relentless, staying right on my tail. I kept my eyes on the road while keeping the phone to my ear, telling the operator everything I could. My pistol was resting on the seat beside me, and I quietly clicked off the safety. I knew the bridge was coming up, a narrow overpass over a creek bed with old concrete abutments. It was the perfect spot for someone to force me off the road. With less than 100 yards to go, the pickup suddenly accelerated, pulling alongside me. I saw Clara's face in the passenger seat, her eyes locked on mine, just as I knew I was about to be forced off the road. I hit the brakes hard enough to send my car into a slide, but not so hard that I lost control. The pickup tried to edge me off, but I swerved just enough to avoid a crash. The truck sped ahead, and I ended up sideways on the shoulder, my rear tires slipping toward the creek bed below. I scrambled out of the car, grabbing the Beretta, my phone, and the recorder, and made a beeline down the steep gravel slope, ducking under the bridge. My heart was pounding in my chest. As I made my way down, I saw the brake lights of the pickup flare up in the distance. I was running blind, feeling my way in the dark under the bridge, hoping I wouldn't run into a rattlesnake, but that wasn't the snake I was concerned about at the moment. I crouched in the shadows, chambering around in the Beretta and preparing for whatever came next. Silence stretched on, though it felt like forever. The connection with the 911 operator was lost, and I struggled to dial again, but being under the bridge was not a good place for a cell signal. I stayed low and waited, not daring to move. It felt like a lifetime before I heard the distant sound of sirens. It was my only hope. I listened closely, knowing that if the cops were too far behind, they would never catch the pickup. But soon enough, I heard their sirens and saw their lights flashing from the same direction I'd come from. The police had arrived. I crawled back up the slope, leaving the Beretta behind, and raised my hands in the air to signal I was unarmed. I saw 2 police cars blocking both lanes of the road, with the pickup stopped in front of them. Then I heard a voice from the other direction, another set of sirens approaching fast. I hit the ground as the cops shouted at the driver of the pickup to get out and lie down. It all happened in a blur. Within moments, Clara and Vince were in custody, charged with attempted murder. The following days were a whirlwind. As expected, my divorce from Clara went through with minimal resistance. I got the sympathy of the judge and the upper hand in the proceedings. Clara's lawyer was frazzled, and she was more desperate to get out of jail than to fight me. Her offer was simple: give me whatever I wanted in the divorce in exchange for help reducing her sentence. During the sentencing hearing, I testified that Clara had been a good wife and mother until she'd fallen under Vince's control. I said I could forgive her for trying to kill me, though I didn't mention the years of emotional abuse, the cheating, or the hell I'd been living in. I couldn't read her expression from where I sat, and I didn't want to. We didn't speak directly during the hearing. Vince got the maximum sentence. It wasn't his first offense, and I sincerely hoped that he'd end up sharing a cell with a man named Chuck who had a particular fondness for certain forms of affection. Clara, on the other hand, received a more lenient sentence, 3 years before she could be considered for parole. That was 4 years ago. I later heard from the district attorney's office that Clara was out on parole. For a while, I kept waiting for her to reach out, but nothing came. Eventually, I did something I never thought I'd do. I reached out to her. "Hi, Bev. This is Ethan," I said when I called the halfway house where she was living. "I have something of yours, and I want to give it back." For several seconds, there was no response. I didn't know if she'd even heard me. When she finally spoke, it was with hesitation. "Where? When?" "Sunday at 2 o'clock. Are you available?" Silence stretched again, but finally, she agreed, her voice cold and distant. "I'll be there." The day came, and I prepared myself for what was bound to be an uncomfortable meeting. I made lemonade and cookies, dressed casually, and set everything up in the den. The doorbell rang, and there she was. Clara stood at the threshold, looking much older than I remembered. Her hair was cut short, and her face was hard. No makeup, no pretense. She looked every bit of her 50 years. I motioned her inside, but there was no handshake, no attempt at cordiality. She just walked in, and I sat down across from her on the couch. The shoebox was sitting on the coffee table, alongside drinks and cookies. I offered her refreshments, but she declined, her eyes still suspicious. I could tell she thought I might try something, poison her, maybe. "No catch, Bev," I said, sliding the box toward her. "Everything's there except for a few thousand, which I gave to Sophie for her down payment on her house. If you want, she'll gladly start paying you back over time." Bev's face shifted slightly. She didn't know Sophie had gotten married. "Sophie's married, Bev. For 2 years now. She's a grandmother. Her daughter's name is Ella," I said softly. Her eyes welled up, and I could see the emotion she was fighting to hold back. "I know you haven't been in contact with her for a while," I continued, "but if you want, I can help pave the way for you to reconnect with her." She nodded, tears running down her face now. I paused and looked down at my hands. "I'll give you the short version of what's happened with me," I said. "Joanna and I didn't last. She was too young for me, and I think she just needed someone to help her get back on her feet. I date some, but I'm better off alone. I've stayed single." I could feel the silence thickening in the room, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I took a deep breath, ready to speak my mind. "I'm going to say some things for my benefit, but maybe you'll understand. I couldn't wait to see you in jail. I hated you, and I imagined you dead. But when you were locked up, my feelings started to shift. I couldn't enjoy my victory, even if that's what it was. So I stopped hating you. I forgave you. I know you're not 100% to blame for what happened. I failed to understand you. We never communicated. We only fought." I looked up at her then. She was wiping away her tears, and I could see the hardness starting to return to her eyes. "That's really it," I said, feeling the weight of the moment. "If you want to leave, go ahead. But if you have anything else to say to me, I'll listen." She stood up, picked up the shoebox, and started walking toward the door. Then I called out to her for the first time in years. "Bev," I said, my voice soft. "I'm just wondering, all that time we were together, especially that last day, it was obvious you saw me as weak. Do you still think I'm weak?" She stopped at the door, her hand resting on the doorknob. She turned slightly, locking eyes with me. "I hate you," she said quietly, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and pain. "You're cruel, and you destroyed my life. She paused, her gaze softening just a little. "But no, I don't think you're weak." And with that, she was gone. I stood there, the room suddenly feeling empty, the final chapter of our tangled past closing with a quiet, unresolved weight.